Friend Nancy Pelosi actually framed the question that I think is on the minds of millions of Americans. Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It was a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night.
Before the debate, spent 6 days in Camp David. Why wasn't that enough rest time, enough recovery time?
Because I was sick. I was feeling terrible. Matter of fact, the docs with me, I asked if they did a COVID test because they were trying to figure out what was wrong. They did a test to see whether or not I had some infection, a virus. I didn't. They just had a really bad cold.
It's just a really bad cold. So millions of Americans and people around the world were just watching as ABC News just had President Biden on for his first nationally televised interview since the disaster of the debate last week. The administration, or at least some of the administration, were hoping it was going to put to rest a lot of these concerns and propel him on toward the campaign. And others were wondering if this was going to be, him announcing his willingness to drop out of the campaign. Neither one of those happened, but we have Larry Johnson back with us. By the way, thanks, Larry, for coming on and me stealing you away from your family for the evening. I know it's a valuable time, so really appreciate it. But really, you were one of the first ones we thought about that, could weigh in on some of this stuff. So just let me get right off the top. What was your impression after having watched this interview here? Did this put to rest your concerns about his mental capacity?
Oh, heavens no, it exacerbated him. And it did the same for a lot of Democrats. This was recorded this afternoon before 4 p.m. while Joe is still in his awake mode before he has to go take nap time. And the fact that it was recorded and edited, raises further questions. But even with the editing, and even with a somewhat sympathetic interviewer, Joe, you still get the poker face look, which is symptomatic of Parkinson's dementia. You still get the trailing off of thoughts, the inability to hold a coherent thought. So this is going to alarm Democrats and accelerate the move to remove him.
I think that it was, we're going to talk about some of the specific things that he said here in a minute. We're going to show some of these, some of the clips from the event itself. But what really, maybe if anything else stood out to me, was that the George Stephanopoulos, when he's asking a lot of these questions, kept emphasizing that senior members of the Democratic Party in the Senate, in the House, in the party writ large, kept on saying that they want him to step aside. He mentioned that there was some Democratic senators that the Washington Post reported earlier tonight that they are, going to try and convince him to step down. And if the senior members of the party are that much on this, I don't see any possibility that he's going to be able to convince them to change their mind and that everybody then get behind him. I just don't see how that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I agree that he's becoming more intransigent, and really that's also another, if you will, symptom of this dementia. Anybody that's had a family member, mother or father, that, there comes a day when you got to take the car keys from them. And, that's their first loss of independence. And, rarely when you're taking the car keys from a parent or someone, an older person that you're responsible for, they go, "Hey, Danny, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate this. You are the best." No, you get called some names and they question your parental heritage, even though it may be your own mother talking to you. So,
Yeah.
That kind of belligerence comes with this increased dementia.
And I think that it reminded me when I'm watching this of something that you said the last time we were on and we were talking about this issue, is that it was right after the debate. And you said that you assessed that there was a high probability that the Democratic Party wanted this debate to happen when it did early enough so that they could change some horses because they knew how it would come across. And given how fast it and seems the momentum building up, it would seem that that's probably pretty plausible.
Yeah, but the problem with all plans, like battle plans, as we talked about before, they're great until you get the first shot off, and then all of a sudden things change. And I think the Democrat plan was to expose Biden, force him out, and replace him with Michelle Obama. That was the plan. Well, that plan's not working. One, Biden's not going willingly, and that's because of Hunter and Jill. They're hanging. They got a death grip on it. They're not gonna let him be pushed out the door unless there's just no other choice. And there may have to be some hardball played with them to persuade them this is probably in your best interest. Otherwise, you're going to be, left hanging out to dry. Kamala Harris, another wild card. They thought, the number I heard was she was offered last year $100 million if she would bow out, get out of the way, because the Democrats recognize she's toxic. But A, she's not going, and B, she's well connected to some of the prominent black members of the Democrat Party, Jim Clyburn in particular. In fact, if you go back and look at the primary that Biden won in 2020 before the election, where his political fortunes shifted, it was because of Jim Clyburn in South Carolina. And I guarantee you, Clyburn's price for that, Kamala Harris has got to be vice president. Now, why Clyburn is so enamored of her, I don't know. But she's the pick. And, the fact that she's a fake black lady is a whole nother issue. But, she's not going quietly. So now the Democrats got a problem because then they forgot to factor in the money. If Biden resigns and Harris remains, all the money that Biden has raised, they can keep it in the campaign.
Yeah.
But if they get rid of Biden and Harris, they're starting fresh. All that money goes away. And so they got to start all over again, raising a lot of money in a very short amount of time with a whole new campaign organization, because they're not going to take the Biden campaign organization and move it over, whether it's Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or, Bugs Bunny, who knows? They may come up with a Disney character. They're going to be scrambling.
And I think for that reason, my assessment is that the only viable alternative is going to be Kamala Harris, whether she's got low approval ratings or not, because of all those reasons, the time, the money already raised, the personal recognition, for good or ill, they've already got that. And I think it would be a lot easier to then add somebody to her as a new vice president. We can talk about that in just a second, but it seems to me that that's going to be the course that they're going to be following. And I think I even saw Hakeem Jeffries was recommended that she should be the one if he should happen to step aside yesterday. I think it was.
Yeah, no, you're right. So this, again, people like to think that the Democrat planners are this smooth, well-organized machine that can just crush the Republicans. And I understand why people believe that, because the Republicans have been a little bit like the Keystone Cops throughout this. They failed to take advantage and, pursue the law and follow some of the same tactics that the Democrats did in exploiting these political weaknesses. But that said, the Democrats are not united. You've got several different factions and sections. And let's remember as well, Clintons and Obamas are not great friends. And I've also, I reminded, one of my friends was writing about, oh boy, if Michelle Obama gets in, it's going to be landslide for the Democrats. And I said, I've not forgotten that in 2016, as Donald Trump's running for president, Barack Obama was so popular and so respected that the American people couldn't wait to vote for Donald Trump. Okay? The point being that if they thought Obama had done such a bang-up job, they would have been all on board for Hillary. They weren't.
Yeah.
And so, I call him the Black Jesus. He was going to, turn water into wine, feed the multitudes, give everybody a free cell phone. Didn't work out that way. And there are a lot of disillusioned Americans who thought Obama was just, a show horse, talked a good game, but it was terrible in the race.
Right. But so let me not get too far or removed. I want to talk before we get to some of these other what next. Let's get back a little bit to what actually happened tonight. So I want to show a couple of clips here. First of all, at the top, the president was asked what he thought of his own debate performance, and did he even watch it? And watch this.
Did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no.
What do you mean you don't think you did? I mean, it was just a few days ago, so either you did or you didn't. So I
Yeah,
thought that was
yeah.
interesting right off the bat.
Well, you saw that initial blank look on his face too. You know, the eyes go up and to the right, and so because he's checking the brain box to say, okay, what answer am I supposed to give here? Because he couldn't give the truthful answer, which was no, I didn't watch it. My staff wouldn't let me.
Yeah, good. Yeah, because I'm thinking a good answer would have been no, I didn't watch it. I was there. I don't really need to go back and watch it again. But the fact that he literally said I don't think I did is not helping his position.
Yeah.
And just overall, his complete. He continued to show this demeanor that I'm not really on top of this. There was lots of these pauses in there, not just on that one question, but on several others where he was talking. There's been this several second delay, then it kicks in again. I mean, all that was on display at the debate. And like you said, I think this just continued to exacerbate the fears.
Yeah, we need to set these interviews to a musical score. I can hear Nat King Cole singing "Unforgettable," as they ask Biden that question, and he goes, "Yeah, I think I did, or I don't think I'm not sure." At least look on the bright side. At least he knew there was a debate. He thinks.
Right. Okay. So next one, I want to look here. This is, I think, maybe the most central question that was asked. It certainly was my biggest issue that I've been asking and pointing out over and over. It's not a matter of can you do the campaign, can you win the election. The real issue is, can you govern for 4 more years? Think about this out loud here. We're saying that we want President Joe Biden to be able to govern from January 2025 until January 2029. So imagine this guy that right here wants to go that far. Now, as you watch Biden's answer to this question, I want you to note how he starts initially to answer the question, and then all of a sudden it's like an old 8-track, if people can remember that, gets bumped into, and it gets on a different track, and he starts answering a different question. Watch this.
As you know, elections are about the future, not the past. They're about tomorrow, not yesterday. And the question on so many people's minds right now is, can you serve effectively for the next 4 years?
George, I'm the guy that put NATO together, the future. No one thought I could expand it. I'm the guy that shoved Putin down. No one thought could happen. I'm the guy that put together the South Pacific Initiative with AUKUS. I'm the guy that got 50 nations, not only in Europe, outside of Europe as well, to help Ukraine. I'm the guy that got Japanese to expand their budget. For example, when I decided we used to have 40% of the computer chip in it, we invented the chip, that little chip, the computer chip. It's in everything from cell phone to weapons. And so we used to have 40%, we're down to virtually nothing. So I get in the plane against the advice of everybody, and I fly to South Korea.
What are we talking about? If computer chips flying to South Korea, what does that have to do with him being president and for the next 4 years?
Yeah. Well, and as George framed the question appropriately, hey, you can always talk about what you've done, but what can you tell the American people about what you'll be able to do going forward? And it just, zoom over his head. And he begins talking about things he did in the past. And some of it is really off base. We invented the computer chips. He restarted NATO. So I mean, the comments are bizarre. He stopped Putin. The Ukrainians will appreciate knowing that, given all the advances of the Russian army over the last 3 weeks. Dramatic advances. So, again, the purpose of this interview was to reassure the prominent donors and the Democrat leaders that, as long as they stand behind Biden, they can expect more of this sharp, witty, precise commentary. And that's exactly what they're afraid of. They say, if we get any more of this, we're dead. Because, he's talking with that low voice. Again, that is another symptom of this Parkinson's dementia, which he clearly has. And, people say, well, they haven't conducted the medical test. Parkinson's dementia is diagnosed based upon physical observation. And the observation ticks off a number of boxes, such as the poker face that you see on Joe Biden on many occasions, where he's looking around lost like he doesn't even know where he is, the stiffened gait, the extreme changes in voice tenor, from, yelling at people real loud to whispering, and it, goes down to this death whisper. So, the problem with this kind of degenerative brain disease is it's not, you can't rehab it like you could a stroke.
Right. I think that's one of the important things to point out, that this, and I think I've mentioned before, I tweeted back in February that these things would only continue, because this, just like you said, this thing doesn't get better. It's only degenerative. And we're seeing it on display right now. And if this was intended to make people think, okay, it was just a bad day, that's what Biden said several times here. Well, I just had a bad day. Everything else is going to be fine. And then I think, Gary, you have this other piece queued up here. He was asked, what if some of the people in your party ask you to step aside? Would you do it? Watch this. Or at least I think we do.
He also lied 28 times. The way the debate ran, not my fault, no one else's fault.
But it seemed like you were having trouble from the first question in, even before he spoke.
Well, I just had a bad night.
Yeah, so it's I just had a bad night. And George, he said right from the beginning, look, this started from the beginning. This wasn't like that things weren't going good or whatever. But he keeps wanting to say it was a bad night, but I don't think that you can hide behind that much longer.
Yeah, now, and let's go back to what he admitted. When he came back from Europe, he was secreted away at Camp David for 6 days, 1 day shy of a week. And, he was not going through Navy Hell Week, okay, for Bud's training. They weren't making him get up in the morning and do burpees and then lay in the surf and then run 4 miles in 12 minutes. And, he was resting for a week. And even if you accept his explanation, his excuse that, I had a cold. I've had colds too. Doesn't take me a week to get over them. And if you were sick in that way, then you should have notified the debate folks, hey, we've got a condition, can't do it. But instead, with all that rest, ostensibly, and all that time to prepare, he still had a bad day. Now, this was not a bad day. This was a normal day for Joe Biden. That's, what bothers me is the press was acting surprised by this. Good Lord. All you had to do was watch him over the last 3.5 years. You could see this one coming.
They've been trying to protect him for a long time. And I think really to underscore or to highlight that this wasn't just a bad day. Number one, you can see from this interview, you're getting a lot of the same thing here that you had during the debate. But let me show you back something happened yesterday, right? Yeah, just yesterday at a speech, a very short speech that he only had to read from a teleprompter in front of the White House on the 4th of July to celebrate some troops. This happened.
I was in that World War I cemetery in France. And the one that one of our colleagues, the former president, didn't want to go and be up there. I probably shouldn't even say it anyway. And by the way, I've been all over the world with you. I've been in and out of battles anyway. You're incredible.
That was just yesterday. Now, you can't keep hiding behind these things, Larry. That's not a bad day. You have a systematic, normal. You just said it yourself.
Yeah, this is what's interesting is this is a little different from what the United States went through during World War II with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. because the press hid the fact that he was crippled, that he was in a wheelchair, that he couldn't walk. And it was the press was complicit with it, but his inability to walk or to need to use a wheelchair did not impinge upon his intellectual faculties. It
Right.
didn't prevent him from being able to actually engage Churchill and Stalin and to understand what was going on with the war. Here, Joe Biden doesn't even understand. He's not able to cognitively deal with the present, think into the future, think about secondary, tertiary effects. That if we're going to fly drones into the Black Sea, for example, after the Russians warned us not to, and they shoot us down, what are we then going to do? Then you get to a secondary response. So, those kinds of decision who's making those decisions? Tom Donilon, who's one of the staffers, and this guy named Bernal, another one that's been identified. Neither of them are qualified to do this, but they're in that position because they're enablers of this medical condition. And this is why the 25th Amendment was put in place, for this very reason. And I frankly, I wouldn't be surprised at some point that we'll see Kamala Harris line up a number of other members of the Biden cabinet, Lloyd Austin, William Burns, and that they will press to do a 25th Amendment on him. Because
Now,
I think
I want to kind of that's obviously an extreme situation that exists. I mean, we have an amendment for it, but it's something that you can't even imagine, except in the most extraordinary circumstances, which this may be. And I want to underscore to our audience here to understand and I want to show some dramatic evidence to show why we may be near the point to where that unbelievable thing becomes believable. So you've just seen Biden here, and we're going to see one more piece here in a second. But first of all, I want to show you the nature of the decline. Here is then candidate Biden in 2008 trying to run for president. Watch this.
My fellow Democrats, the price of that failure can be measured in the blood we have shed and the treasure we have lost. 3,067 dead, 23,000 wounded, and over $350 billion committed thus far with no sight and end. Folks, we must stop this war.
So that was a very lucid, very articulate Joe Biden. And then here he is in 2012 in a vice presidential debate against Representative Ryan, absolutely shredding him. Watch this.
Stop talking about how you care about people. Show me something. Show me a policy. Show me a policy where you take responsibility. And by the way, they talk about this great recession. If it fell out of the sky, like, oh my goodness, where did it come from? It came from this man voting to put 2 wars in a credit card, to at the same time put a prescription drug benefit in the credit card, a $1 trillion tax cut for very wealthy. I was there. I voted against them. I said, no, we can't afford that. And now all of a sudden, these guys are so seized with the concern about the debt that they created.
Congressman Ryan.
Now, and back in those days, he was on top of it. And by the way, I met him when he was vice president, when he came to Bagram Air Base, where I was stationed in 2010. And I was able to meet him because I knew some of the people on the staff there. And he was just like that. He was articulate. He was focused. He was very kind to take the time to meet me while I was there. I appreciated that. And that man is nowhere to be seen now.
Yeah. Well, but did you pick up in the first clip, the one from 2008, where at the end he said, instead of saying no end in sight, he said no sight and end. He did flip flop those, which again,
he did, but that's a little one. You can forgive that one.
Yeah.
But
that's a little one, and sometimes it's an indicate. The man had already had brain surgery because he'd had a brain aneurysm, so it's not like he was not at the high risk factor for these kinds of situations. But again, when you jump ahead and go from those, he could at least make coherent arguments, and he could be, he could be funny, and he didn't go through these extreme variations of voice from very loud to very soft. But what's being exhibited now, the more they try to trot him out to pretend that all is well, it's just going to continue now to reinforce. The media has got the story. Every year about this time, whether it's end of July, 1st of August, you've got a story that just takes over and obsesses with everybody. This is it this year. Getting rid of, Joe Biden, dementia, and, him being forced to resign.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to something you said a second or earlier. We talked about it a little bit about where you suspected that the Democratic Party itself may have really already decided they're trying to put this in a situation where they, if not force him out, try to force him out against his will. So in the interview here, George Stephanopoulos asked President Biden a hard telling question of what is he going to do if some of these people in the Democratic Party ask him to walk. Watch how this went.
But the prevailing sentiment is this. They love you, and they will be forever grateful to you for defeating Donald Trump in 2020. They think you've done a great job as president, a lot of the successes you outlined. But they are worried about you and the country, and they don't think you can win. They want you to go with grace, and they will cheer you if you do. What do you say to them?
I say the vast majority are not where those folks are. I don't doubt there's some folks there. Have you ever seen a group at time when elected officials running for office aren't a little worried? Have you ever seen that? I've not. Same thing happened in 2020. Oh, Biden, I don't know, man. What's he going to do? He may bring me down. He may.
Mr. President, I've never seen a president at 36% approval get reelected.
Well, I don't believe that's my approval rate. That's not what our polls show.
So Gary, if you can stop it right there, that man, I mean, there's George just being honest about it. That I've never seen anybody with this low approval rating. They've never been reelected, and he just won't accept it's not true. This really seems like to me a different version playing out what you talked about earlier in this episode of like your dementia father, you have to take the keys away. And the family has an intervention and they're saying, I'm sorry, Dad, we're going to have to take the keys because it's not safe. And the dad, who's been the dad and the patriarch of the family for all, he's going to push back on that. No, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. Everyone else sees it, but he can't. And that just really seems like what we saw there.
Yeah. And that's why, in fact, I think that's another reason this is starting to resonate. Because there are so many people out there where they've had this experience in their family, and they know how tough it is. But they also know that Joe Biden, in the condition he is, shouldn't be anywhere near the nuclear button, shouldn't be anywhere near the White House. He needs to be in a nursing home. He needs to be in an assisted living facility. He needs to be probably close to an Alzheimer's care unit where he can't wander off, without knowing where he's going and be unprotected. So, but notice several of the things he said to Stephanopoulos, I couldn't understand. Now, I may have some hearing issues going on, but I got pretty good earbuds in. When he starts talking, you're going, what did he say? I felt like Donald Trump last week at the debate. I'm not sure what he just said, and perhaps he's not even sure what he said. So this, I tell you what, I think ABC agreed to do this tonight. It's sort of one more chance for Biden to redeem himself, and for Biden to actually perform. Do you remember that Saturday Night Live skit they did on Ronald Reagan, where the first part you got little Jimmy the Cub Scout in, and Reagan's talking real soft and acting very confused, and it doesn't like he doesn't know where he's at. As soon as the kid leaves, Reagan jumps up and goes, "Okay, bring out the map," and he starts doing tactical briefings and pointing to this and doing this, and it's just a complete 180-degree turn. That's what they were hoping Joe Biden would do tonight, and he didn't.
We're going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more border patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look,
Yeah, that's. Look. This is
We
not.
have 1,000 trillionaires in America.
Yeah, this
I
is
mean,
not
billionaires
to
in America.
to minimize or to say anything negative about President Biden. I mean, I always respect every president we have because I want them to always do well. But there does come a time, and this to me absolutely locks in that we are at the moment to where something has to be done. George Stephanopoulos mentioned during this that I'd seen a headline from the Washington Post earlier today where Democratic senators, and I forget which ones it was right off the top of my head, have said, hey, we need to get together and talk to him and convince him to withdraw. Democratic senator, I think the one from one of the Democratic Virginia senators was one of them, and several others. But I think that it's to that point. So what is your assessment of what do you think is going to happen now that this thing is aired? What's going to happen tomorrow?
Well, it's going to be a combination of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer coming together, because they're going to be hearing from their respective members, this, guys who are running for Senate and running for House, guys and gals, and they're going to realize that Biden's a drag on the ticket, and if he remains atop of the ticket, and these members of the Senate and House are forced to run with him at the top of the ticket, they're dead. They understand that, and there's nothing motivates a politician like getting reelected. And so at that point, Biden's expendable. And there will be every effort in the book, including some intimidation factors. Because remember, Hunter goes on trial in September. And so, I wouldn't put it past Obama or one of the Clintons to get to Merrick Garland and say, you know what, if you want to have any kind of career after the Department of Justice, you better make sure you take down Hunter now. Got to make him an example. Got to put enough pressure on Dad to get him out. They will be subtle about how they do it, but that's what's going to be done. And so you'll start seeing the government, it's like this guard dog, this big Rottweiler that's angry at any intruder. All of a sudden, the Rottweiler's hungry, hasn't eaten for a while, and you look like a good piece of meat. They're going to turn on Joe Biden.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen, because this literally was just over, not even an hour ago, and people are just now starting to unpack a lot of this, which is why we're doing this show here. We want to help people see what's really going on, but I don't think this one's going to be that hard, Larry. I think that people are going to recognize that a change is going to have to be made, and we'll see if they do it with dignity. We'll see if they have to do it with embarrassing. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but I feel very sure that that this is unrecoverable.
Yeah. Tonight, the Stephanopoulos' job was to see, can Biden be saved? And at the end of the episode, answer is no.
Yeah, I think it was. And man, we're into uncharted territory here. It's never happened like this in American history. And we're going to continue to watch it. We're going to continue to bring in you all the updated analysis when it happens. And Larry, thanks for coming on late at night like this. We appreciate it. And we are definitely going to keep an eye on this one.
Thank you, Danny, for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Always my pleasure. And thanks, you guys. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep on getting good information like this, because we are unintimidated and uncompromised to bring you the truth that you need, no matter what it is. And we're going to stay on top of this for you. Keep an eye on this channel so that you'll know when the next episode comes up. And we will see you next time on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.
Your friend Nancy Pelosi actually framed the question